Welcome to the Toilet Paper Diaries. Today's show is dedicated to the changes in the learning world. So if you're working in HR, you're a speaker, you're a trainer, you're a mentor, or you're wondering how all these things blur together, this is the show for you. Keep watching to find out where we go next in corporate training on the Toilet Paper Diaries.
Hi, Dave. How are you? Good to see you in episode 98.
98. It's ticking closely to our magic 100. Who could have guessed we'd get that? I wasn't even sure if we we're going to live that long, but it's a good thing that we are, I think.
Yes, and I think this episode is going to be incredibly interesting because, throughout this year, the entire educational system has gone on its head. It's changed dramatically. So right now, the schools have to adapt themselves completely into a different way of delivering content, learning to do stuff online and also offline. And the corporate world is catching up. They were not really very effective at doing this, but now I think there's been a ton of changes which are going to be benefiting. If you are in HR, if you're a trainer, if you're a speaker, if you're a corporate leader, you need to watch and listen to everything that we're going to be saying today because there's a ton of important content.
Absolutely, because one of the things that's happened since lockdown is a lot of companies have kind of put on hold how they look after their teams, purely because they weren't sure how to deliver it, and they weren't sure whether they were going to do their annual let's book everybody into a big ballroom or into breakout rooms. We'll get a hotel, we'll do the catering, we'll do all the normal logistics, and we'll do it over a long weekend or a couple of days, and we'll do the management and everybody differently. Now what's happening is it's been too long to wait until people go back to the office, and some people might never go back to the office, but you still need to update your team and you still need to get them in that space, but also realizing that there's a remote version to this. And so to do that, we have to reflect it, and that's what today's show is going to be about when we start talking about the learning management systems. Do you want to explain what they are, Ernesto?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started noticing my kids when they started doing all the offline school, that they were using a software that was called Canva. And Canva was really interesting software where, they had their assignments and they had the different videos and they had the different audios and they had the different tests that they need to do. And everything was really nicely put together. And then they will tell them, well, this assignment has to be finished by this time. And all this information was set up there. And then the kids were really very focused because they needed to know that when and what they had to do all the time, which I thought it was great. So it was the first time for me, it must have been about a year ago that I started learning about LMS, which is the learning management systems. And then I started seeing that, it was incredibly effective. And then I started doing more research. And then I saw that many companies were already establishing learning management systems also for themselves. And right now, the biggest opportunity I think there is in corporate training for speakers, trainers, coaches is to help companies create properly working learning management systems. So it's incredibly interesting how it all works and how it has all developed.
We're going to investigate that in a moment, but what I would say is for every speaker and every HR organization and every training company, there's a real problem here as to who actually owns the content. Are you developing it and handing it to the company so they can use it for their staff, in which case they'll use it for generations of staff, and unless you're licensing it, you won't get paid for it, and you've got no way of monitoring how many people are using it because it's handed over like a keynote speech. Alternatively, if you hold it on your own platform and they come to you, they may not want to have it like that. They may want to integrate it into their own system. So there's a couple of challenges as to who owns the content, who's licensing it, but also remember that at the end of the day, if you've developed it, it is your content. So even though you want to get paid, don't be bullied into handing it over unless they're going to pay you extra for that. And they do have always a budget for buying books, which now can be used for accessing your content.
Absolutely, 100%. And this is a great recommendation also that I can give you. So if you are creating content, generate content that it could be repurposed. So, I mean, you can, for example, from the very beginning, you can create content that has no beginning or end, and then all you need to do is just create it with different logos or whatever it is afterwards. But the middle of the your presentation or whatever content you're creating should be in a bit more generic way, so that it could be repurposed for many other companies. So that is a great point, Dave.
In fact, to look at it, there's six major advantages that you should be using when you look at a learning management system. First of all, I'd like to say that you look at the interoperability. You've got to make sure that when it actually gets put together, it can be used on different platforms, different people can get access to it, and you don't have to be there for the whole experience once you've created it. So also with that, you got the accessibility. It has to be available online, so you can use it on your device, you can use it on your desk, and you can also use it on your tablet, wherever you are. So that's important. What else would you say, Ernesto?
Yeah, well, as we were saying, it needs to be reusable, it needs to be repurposable. So if you are using it for one company, that you will be able to also license it to other companies, because I think this is one of those very important keys for speakers. If you are creating content, you are going to be benefiting from licensing your content. I mean, just think about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That has been licensed. I mean, I purchased a license, when was it, 20 years ago. Also, I mean, there's so many different programs that have had this licensing. And right until now, I mean, I had never really thought about this process. But I think now I know very well how I can repurpose my content so it will be reusable or repurposed. And also another important thing, which is the durability, or more than anything, the shelf lifetime. I mean, if you create content and it's going to be good, make sure that you are doing it so that you can make it last as long as possible. Right now, it's difficult to actually find evergreen kind of content, because of course things are changing so much, but try to make sure that this content lasts for a long time.
Well, also with that, I mean, you've got to be able to maintain it and change it as it goes and adapt it. And when we're talking about durability, I won't mention certain very well-known motivational speakers, but I know that some people go along to see some keynotes I won't mention, and they can say word for word what that guy is going to say, what that woman is going to say on stage, because they've seen it so many times and it's a set system. But the music alters, the impression alters, even though the basic content is always the same. So it's worthwhile thinking about, when you create the stuff, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to freshen it up for a new generation, and have access to change it on a regular basis.
So I have a question for you. Are you right now using an LMS? If you're a trainer, if you're a speaker, are you in HR? Are you using an LMS? If you're using an LMS, let us know what are you using and how effective has been set up for you. I think that's just something that we would like to know on the comments.
Absolutely. Put it in the comments. It's fascinating to see that, because a good LMS will also support various formats that you'd use. So you've got text, you've got video, you've got audio. You can access, as I mentioned, anytime and online and from anywhere. So nowadays, we're talking about a global market. You need to really be able to make sure that when you've got friends or clients in Australia and Timbuktu, in America, in the UK, in Dubai, that at any point they can go on and it seems like fresh content. So that also means that what you would normally do is you'd go, if you were traveling as a speaker or a trainer, you go to the country and you'd adapt yourself to make sure that you're talking about their local currency and you're talking about their local landmarks. All those things have to be dialed back to make sure that not only are they evergreen, but they apply to everybody else, wherever they are. So that means possibly being less specific, but more for everybody, and keeping it all open, because these are the things that when somebody accesses your content, if it feels it's not for them, then they'll remember that subconsciously for the rest of your content, and there'll be a disconnect, and they'll feel it when it comes to the end of a project.
Yeah, here are 3 things that I really like about learning management systems. First of all, you can make it interactive and collaborative. So basically, you can assign peers so that they can work together. You can create quizzes, and those quizzes are part of the gamification process so that people are having more fun. You basically set a time. You say, well, you have 72 hours or 96 hours or 48 hours so that you can finish the assignment, and you can keep track on the progress. And that, of course, it's very effective, because then you can bring it and track it back to the on-time learning kind of curriculum that is so important for companies. So once again, if you're a trainer, if you're a speaker, make sure that you start really getting familiar with LMSs, because that's going to be really one of the hot trends in 2021, 22, 23, and, and beyond. And if you're in corporate, in the corporate world, and you're in HR or whatever, that's the big question. Well, are you learning with? Are you people learning with LMSs? Let us know, because we really would like to help you.
You've got to be very careful when you do it, though, because there's a couple of disadvantages you need to be aware of when it comes to creating your LMS system. First of all, you've got to be willing to make that adaptation from what you would normally do face-to-face to online lectures. Now, the likes of Yale and Harvard have done it very well. And they've done it long before the pandemic. They were creating certification for people to watch their lectures and actually get qualified from overseas without ever traveling to the US. But you need to be aware of that. There's a couple of other things you need to be aware of. When you are delivering content, because for you, your energy can drop quite considerably, it can come across as basically being impersonal and boring, because you haven't got feedback the way you'd have when you're looking at faces in your audience. And also make sure that you're aware of all the different learning styles that your audience can have. You're going to get some people that are visual, some people that are auditory, some people that are kinesthetic. Now, that kind of works in a delivery system, but only if you make it work. Otherwise, people are just going to love it from a visual point of view, maybe from an auditory point of view, but kinesthetics are going to be bored. There's no interaction, there's nobody to play with, and they'll zone out. So you can be very aware of that.
So there's now another dimension, Dave, on education and training. So first of all, we have the trainings where people will go there, and as you were saying, I mean, they will have to pay for hotels, and they will have to pay for meals, and they have the people going there into trainings. While many of those trainings were very ineffective because they were very boring, right now we have the opportunity to do things in a different way. So we have the element of which is going to be on the learning management system, but also what happens when we go live, like we are doing Zooms, because that, I think, is the other important part. So why don't we go, Dave, over the 10 points that we have, so that we can help coaches, trainers, speakers, and also the HR people to know how they can do training as we are doing it right now. You have, let's go with those 10 points.
Perfect. So right now, let's start the essential 10 things you need to have if you're going to be delivering corporate training in the future and beyond. First of all, Ernesto, I would say communicate your training goals and expectations to all your attendees from the beginning. Because you will have decided somewhere in the blurb if people are buying your system, or with the HR department when you put a proposal to train their team, somewhere along the line there's a load of bullet points of objectives and benefits and features and all that stuff. You don't need to bore people, but just tell them what they're going to get at the end of that whole experience. They don't need to know the features. They're going to find out when they do it, but get that buy-in. If you don't get the buy-in, people are going to say, why am I still here? And especially when you're doing it digitally, they have so many distractions, they don't have to be still there. So make sure you let them know what they get from the very beginning. That's number one.
Absolutely, 100%. And one of the things that I think we need to add at this point is the fact of what platform are you going to be using? It could be either Teams, or it could be Zoom, or it could be GoToWebinar, or it could be whatever it is. And if that is the case, make sure that you have a training on how to use the platform. I mean, we actually have one video, which is just appearing right now above this video on the video cards, where we were teaching about Zoom. We have been over 14 months communicating on a daily basis on Zoom, and still people do not know how to use this. So you can have great content, but if you suck at the tool or the platform you're using, it's going to be absolutely useless, the content that you're going to be delivering.
Well, we recently were watching a presentation with one of our heroes as a really important guru in the personal development and training and marketing world. And he was very basic in his delivery, which was kind of disappointing. As engaging as he is as a speaker, there was no shiny objects, nothing to make it go wow, which wasn't very impressive. But just to say, there are lots of ways of doing it, and people will expect it to be cutting edge. So do what you can to make sure that. What's number two?
Number two is to try to, as much as possible, gamify and develop the content that you are creating. Just don't try to train, because this is exactly what Dave was mentioning earlier. I mean, you say, well, I'm going to prepare a training session. And once again, this person was, in my eyes, one of the most respected speakers in the entire industry. We cannot name him, but he is, in my eyes, one of the most accomplished trainers and speakers. And his delivery literally sucked.
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything, but it was just true. But anyway, moving on with that. Number three, I'd say when you do train, remember that all the way as you're going along, you have to train against the real results that you promise that you're going to have, the real benefits that people are going to have as they go with you on this journey. And it can be a journey from the quizzes you ask to the different gamification ideas to everything. Everything should have the end result in mind as you go all the way through, and make sure that you draw conclusions with them as you do it so they know that it's working. Otherwise, you can end up going off at a tangent, which makes sense to you, but to them, it might mean nothing and they disappear because they're just thinking you're wasting their time. You can never waste their time.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Point number four is remember to make the training a two-way process. When you are online delivering a training in Zoom, in GoToWebinar, whatever it is, you just cannot start talking. You have to make it in many ways interactive. You have to send people to do different things. Like, for example, right now, what I would like you to do is make sure that if you're finding value on this video, make sure to subscribe, or make sure to give us a like, or just up here, there's going to be another video appearing on corporate training. Can you see how with only using these little phrases, I am making it two-way? I'm making sure that you, which is watching right now on the screen, is interacting with whatever I am doing. Not just say, well, okay, so what do you think? And ask the question, and then everybody's quiet. Make sure that people get engaged, and it's a two-way street. Make sure that both of you are interconnecting, because right now that we are in the virtual world, this is super important.
And as you're doing it, don't be scared to let them have access to PDFs and videos as well. So as they're going through the training, refer to stuff and say, right, at this point, go to the notes, and you can see number 3, download that and have a look. This diagram I'm going to be sharing with you, I'm going to put it on screen here, but I want you to have your own copy so you can go through it later on. Make it interactive, because otherwise it's going to feel very staid and stale, and you can lose people easily. And of course, that all comes back as part of your online reputation, because what will happen is they'll feedback to HR. I was a little bit bored by it, and they won't recommend you for future stuff. And HR people talk to HR people, and they move to different companies, and referrals are the best way for you to get new business. So concentrate making it right from the very beginning, and you'll stay busy as people travel around. They're going to arrive at a new company and say, you know what you need? You need to bring Ernesto and Dave to work with you. Well, Dave especially, but Ernesto always comes too, or something like that.
Why is that? I mean, it should be both of us.
Of course it should, but just pay Dave more. So also that's very important about the two-way speaking. That it's not just what you say, but they've got to hear it and understand it as well.
That's why you need to learn how to use the tools, because if not, you won't be able to bring the PDF and show the video. Like right now, we're showing a video on the screen of Dave and myself training, and we are showing right now something appearing under the screen. How are we doing that? Well, it is because we know how to use the system, and that's what you need to learn.
Absolutely. Number five, manage their energy to get the best results out of the audience. There's nothing worse. And you know yourself from watching TV. If you're watching a movie and watching TV, you got 90 minutes before people are done and they want to do something else, unless it's a Lord of the Rings, in which case they're such geeks, they're going to stay in longer. 90 minutes is a template for most movies, and that's very true for your audience too. That's if you're watching a movie that's been produced with millions of dollars to keep people engaged. If it's just you talking to an audience, live, or it's you talking to an audience online, it's far less. Now, in an audience that's in front of you physically, typically it'll be a 45 minutes, then a break. And if you didn't take that break, people start getting fidgety, they want to go bathroom, they want to talk to each other, they start going on their phones. You got to stay on top of that. If it's online, I would say it's much less than that. It's probably about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, because of the fact that that whole thing of being in front of somebody is a lot more intense. To hold somebody's gaze, to have their attention when there's no body language that's really being shared with them that you'd normally get. There's no temperature share in the fact that you're sharing the same atmosphere. It's literally just watching a video when you're delivering online. You need to make sure it's punchy. And in many cases, some of the courses that I've been on, they're delivered in 5-minute chunks. So just be aware of people's attention spans.
Yeah, absolutely. Number six, you have to take advantage of tech. I mean, there's so many opportunities of doing different things. Like, for example, in Zoom, you can have breakout rooms. If you can have breakout rooms, try to talk to the people in HR, try to talk to somebody that can work with you so that you can get people to work in different breakout rooms. Make sure that you use surveys, make sure that you use scorecards, make sure that you know exactly when to do live trainings, when to have recorded trainings. Make sure sometimes to bring some guest presenters. So try to do all sorts of things that you can create with the amazing thing of opportunities that tech brings. I mean, right now, you don't have to bring a guest speaker to your office. You can actually be Zooming into somebody in Australia or somebody in Dubai or somebody in China, wherever it is, and they can just make a short presentation. I mean, if you use tech, and you take advantage of all the possibilities that the virtual world provides, people are going to love it.
Absolutely. And remember, when you're talking about getting those guest speakers, they don't have to be live. They don't have to sit there for 2 hours watching you speak, and then it's their turn to say something. You can pre-record it and make it sound as though it's live. So now we're going to go to Ernesto. Ernesto, how are you? I'm great, Dave. And then he goes into it. That's what we do when I talk to Ernesto. He's not here. It's only me live. He's making it up. I re-recorded it. I've got a script. How are you, Ernesto? How are you, Ernesto? Yeah, his microphone doesn't work. He's missed the gag completely, but it still counts. All right, next thing is you invest in the content delivery. You invest in the platform. You invest in the tech. We've already mentioned you need to have it, but don't let somebody else pay for it. They're going to pay for it by the fact that you're going to get the gigs. But the fact is, if you're waiting for other people to deliver it to you, it's not going to be cutting edge. There's so many factors you need to have in mind when getting it. First of all, there's so many products available. What is the deployment they give you? Which organizations are going to prefer to have that as learning? You know, what kind of learning type is it? Is it blended? Is it single? Is it whatever? E-commerce. Are you selling other products during the whole thing? Is it gamifying best? Some things don't gamify easily. The platform that you use could be challenging for that. You need to make sure that it's adaptable for mobile learning as well as face-to-face, as well as on a laptop or a Meet or iMac or something. And also that it's got access to social and video conferencing. It might be the best way to deliver your content is to have an online conference and everybody comes at the same time. That's not necessarily talking about doing it as Zoom. That's talking about delivering it maybe even for outsiders. So you got your in-house training for a corporate, but the same content might be available for everybody who knows you on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, in which case they can buy tickets and you do the same content again. So you own these platforms, you invest in them. If you don't do it, you're always going to be at the mercy of somebody else. And I've got to say with all this as well, you're always going to be at the mercy of event managers who right now have had a big challenge because their whole system of logistics and hiring a venue and the catering, all the things that they would normally do to step up the pricing, and then they'd have a little bit left for you as a speaker, they can't do that anymore. If you can own this, you can own everything. So invest in the system yourself.
Yeah, this is a great point, Dave, because I think right now the monetization system for speakers or for trainers, it has changed. And right now, I think licensing it's absolutely critical, which of course it is super important that you understand how to put together these learning management systems because that's going to help you monetize. So that's a very important point. So number eight is if you are having all this content in a digital way, you know what? That's one of the great things about having a system like this. You can be flexible. So if you're creating content, chunk it into short videos of 10, 15, 20 minutes long so that people can watch them. Give them a specific time in how long they need to have before they can see that specific content. Give them time to see it at their own time, which is a great thing. I mean, right now I have my kids sometimes doing homework at 9 o'clock at night. Now I do not know if that's that was the
They
intention of
tell
it.
you they're doing homework at 9 o'clock at night.
I see them doing homework at 9 o'clock at night, and I mean because of course they know that they know that the assignment is going to be due by 10 o'clock, so they do it at their own time. It's a different world, and that's why it's so important that we learn how to use this flexibility that these tools provide.
Absolutely. I would also say that with that, um, the emphasis on success is about when you first embrace personal development. Now, you and I have been into personal development for what, 30 years at least,
I think
maybe even longer. That's
probably
when
not.
we first made a difference to our own success and became speakers and trainers and business people. We realized that everything that happens in our life is driven by us. I think that continuous learning and development culture has never been more important than now, because your average person wouldn't do what we do. If you just get a job and they work for an organization where they could meet around the water cooler or go for a cigarette, or if they had a problem, they'd take a member of staff to one side, have a chat with them, and they had an ecosystem that would foster being able to grow at the level that you want it to be, and would have feedback from supervisors, managers, and directors that would make it all work. In many cases now, it's all remote. So what you have to do is you have to drive this motivation internally. You have to manage your happiness. You have to manage your growth. You have to manage your feedback loops. And so the best way to do it from point of view of being a trainer or developing content is to get people into that personal development mindset. Otherwise, your content is going to fall flat because they expect to be babysat and they don't get that anymore. And from the point of view of somebody who's watching the content, get into personal development, because then you'll have less time criticizing what happens and what's delivered to you, and more time taking the gems and implementing it on your journey and your own adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. So point number 10 is be brief, get to the point, don't overextend it, and make sure that you understand that people have Zoom fatigue. I mean, there's one saying that says, when the only tool you have is a hammer, you see every problem as a nail. And Zoom is one tool only, that's it. But there's many other different ways in how to deliver your content. So make sure that you create constant loops, make sure that you feel it like if it is a dance, you're getting people engaged, you're gamifying, but be brief, to the point, and change the way things are, just not a Zoom meeting. Because right now I have Zoom fatigue, and right now, I mean, I prefer just to take the telephone and call somebody, because yeah, it is, we have been over Zoomed.
And many people say that when it comes to having a meeting. Many people, especially when I'm based in Dubai, say, can we meet face to face? I don't want to do it on Zoom. Well, yes and no. Bottom line is, I don't want to travel and sit in traffic for an hour and a half to get to a 20-minute meeting with anybody anymore. So it's going to be a combination. I have said to clients that if they want to have a chat, then I'll make it worthwhile, because my Zooms are interactive. It's not just talking to a screen. And when they see that, then it's a big difference. But you've got to do that yourself. So there's the 10 points. And remember, when you're creating your content, you want to be very aware that you've got to do it, first of all, for in person, because we won't be in lockdown forever. Some people will want you to physically turn up and train their staff. So you're going to make sure whatever's on your Zoom system or whatever your Meets or Teams system is also something that can be done physically. You're going to make sure that there's an online version so you can go live online and monitor people and make sure that at every stage you ask for their questions and make sure they're happy with it. And also make sure that there's a recording done so people can view it later in their own time. If you don't do that and they miss it and they go through and watch it later, but it feels like they're not really part of that whole experience, that's a challenge. So when you are doing it, be aware that timing is important. Don't say, let's meet back at 12 o'clock, because if you're in a different part of the world, 12 o'clock means nothing. Say from now, we're going to go on for another 15 minutes, then we're going to take a break, then a 10-minute break, and we'll come back. So roughly in the next half an hour. Anyone, anywhere can understand that. So just be aware that when people are watching it later, and in most cases, like when we do this show, we do it live, but people watch it later. If we're only live and only good when we're live, then the biggest viewers will just not connect with us.
Absolutely. So I'm going to do a shameless plug for Dave and myself, because I think we have been giving you a ton of amazing content. And, in reality, we have a lot of experience doing this. I believe that we have been very cutting edge in everything that has been happening throughout the lockdown and the pandemic. We have really been always ahead of the game. And we will be very happy to help you set up your LMS, to help you set all your corporate training, whether you're a company or whether you're a speaker. So get in touch with us. I mean, we can have a 15, 20-minute free consultation, no strings attached. You can see up here, you can see my name and contact. And
you
just
keep
down
pointing
here.
at your nose.
Well, okay,
Stop.
like this. I'm just saying, just because up here, what you're seeing is my contact, and just down here you can see Dave's contact, so that you can feel free to contact us. You can either connect with the crazy Dutch Mexican or with the amazing and funny Brit. Either way,
Right.
it's fine.
From now on, you go like that,
Okay.
or you go like that. You don't point at your nose or your toilet parts. I'm just saying now, that's what it looks like. Just saying. So
You're
with
right.
that, if you want to connect with Ernesto and check out his nose and his toilet parts, there's a different pricing system, but I'm not judging. Hope you enjoyed the show. With that, I think we should take a break and let you get on with your incredible LMS training and learning how to launch yourself on a new and hungry corporate market.
Absolutely. It's been great. Now we have 98 episodes under our belt. Very soon, we'll see you on the 100th episode of the Toilet Paper Diaries. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.